In this video, we will explore the role of natural processes on aerosols. First, let's start by discussing the atmosphere. The atmosphere can be thought of almost like an envelope that surrounds the Earth, made up of gases and aerosols. For this video, we will focus primarily on aerosols and their impacts. So, what is an aerosol? An aerosol can be either a liquid or a solid particle suspended in a gas, such as the atmosphere. For example, sea spray, small dust particles, pollen, and soot are all examples of natural aerosols. Aerosols can also be released from human sources, and some natural processes can also be considered anthropogenic. For example, soot from wildfires can be considered natural or anthropogenic, depending on how the fire started. For this video, we will focus primarily on the natural sources of aerosols and their impacts. Some natural sources include the ocean, forests and other vegetation, and volcanoes. Let's start by looking at the ocean. Ocean sea spray contains a complex mix of salt and microbes, which can be lofted into the atmosphere by breaking waves and wind. Trees and other vegetation also release natural aerosols. Trees release what are called VOCs, which stands for volatile organic compounds. Imagine the smell of a pine forest. Those are VOCs. Just like in the ocean, winds act to carry these aerosols up into the atmosphere. Finally, let's take a look at volcanoes. Volcanic eruptions release large amounts of aerosols in the form of sulfur dioxide, which can be wafted into the atmosphere by the force of the eruption and carried great distances by winds. Now that we're familiar with some natural aerosol sources, what impacts do they have? Small aerosol particles from the ocean can result in scattering of solar radiation from the sun and act as cloud condensation nuclei, which means they are kind of like seeds from which clouds can grow. Similarly, spores and other small aerosols from vegetation can also act as seeds from which clouds can form. Who knew aerosols were so important for cloud formation? Aerosols, including sulfur dioxide released during volcanic eruptions, can actually act to cool the planet for variable amounts of time. Coincidentally, sulfur dioxide from anthropogenic emissions caused major problems related to acid rain back in the 1970s before regulations were put in place. Recently, Southern California experienced a large red tide. Red tides and phytoplankton blooms have been associated with the release of aerosols, which can contribute to cloud formation as well. Some red tides produce toxins, which can become aerosolized. However, this most recent red tide event was deemed non-toxic and just produced beautiful bioluminescence, which can be seen in these photos as glowing blue light. As humans continue to perturb natural cycles, it is likely that aerosol cycling will change in the future, both directly and indirectly. Humans may directly perturb cycles by increased release of anthropogenic aerosols and indirectly through anthropogenic climate change. If you're interested in learning more about aerosols and their impacts, check out these resources. Thanks for listening.